Hello folks, before we get started, I just also want to point out once again, we are very close to 2,000 subscribers. So if you have not subscribed to the channel and you do enjoy watching this video, I highly recommend, clicking that button, which is, I guess it's gray now. I don't know, man. Like the dark mode makes it all kinds of things. So either it's red, white, gray, blue. Just do make sure to hit that button if you do enjoy this video. And now, without further ado, let's get groovy. Evil Dead Rise was directed by Lee Cronin and is the latest film in the Evil Dead franchise, following the original Bruce Campbell trilogy and then the 2013 reboot, requel sort of thing that happened. But all of these films have been pretty successful so far. Fans have enjoyed all of them. And then of course there was Ash vs. Evil Dead, which people also really enjoyed. And so it's all a franchise that is coming off of basically not really having too many misses. People just really do love the Evil Dead films and of course the TV series. And so naturally there was a lot of excitement going into Evil Dead Rise. And in this one you follow two sisters who are trapped inside a building along with a nephew and two nieces. And things start to go horribly wrong as things are unleashed from basically the lowest depths of hell, and eventually they're in a fight for survival. That's the vague plot of the film that I'm sort of putting together in the best way possible, because a lot of crazy stuff happens in this movie and I would rather not go into what else happens because the marketing doesn't give you everything. Evil Dead Rise is a film that I was very interested in seeing, and mostly because of that track record, because it's maintained that. And they're fantastic films. They're really fun and enjoyable, but they're also extremely gory and crazy. It rides the line of being a bit campy and a bit more disturbingly violent extremely well, and it has done so for a very long time. And Evil Dead Rise, at least the marketing sold itself as a much more gory and a much more disturbingly violent film than the rest of them. But even those have had that kind of stuff. Evil Dead Rise is just splattered with gore from pretty much the first minute, and it stays that way throughout. This film is a red-soaked, just absolute nightmare to watch, and it's a really fun time. I was watching it with a pretty packed theater at, about 10 p.m. at night, so that's pretty good. And people seem to be having a great time, mostly because, again, it rode that line of being very silly, but also very much disturbingly violent pretty well. Like, there are some line reads that are in there that are deliberately in there for you to go, that's funny. But then there are other moments which are like, oh my god, that's a pretty crazy image right there. And all in all, in the end of the day, when you go into an Evil Dead film, there are certain things that you just expect, which is just to see that crazy spectacle unfold. And it does. The film has a very simple premise. You get very simple character development, if barely any, just enough to sort of give you the situation, like lay it out, like, all right, here's the characters, here's what's going on. You get enough to go off of, and then eventually the rest of the film commences to the point that those certain critical things are there when it comes to each character, which is why you're like, oh, well, I don't want anything to happen to this character, I don't want anything to happen to that character. Although the film will sometimes move pieces along in a way where it'll be like, well, that character is done for because this happens, or something like this, I'm trying not to spoil it in any way, but it does do those things as well. And again, in a mostly pretty self-aware way, making blood fly on the screen as much as it can. And well, there are probably going to be people who call it a bit too gratuitous, because gore is something that often gets, criticized. It's like, if you do too much, then it becomes to a point where it's just, beyond parody. In the case of Evil Dead Rise, you can make the exception because that's the kind of franchise it is. Like, you can sort of make that kind of, rule and go, okay, this is fine. Here it makes sense. And I have to say that Cronin does a really, really good job. It has a striking opening scene. I'm not gonna tell you what happens exactly with the coolest title card. I'll just tell you that much. But as the film progresses and eventually it starts going into more messed up territory and you start seeing even more crazy stuff happen, the work that's done in that isolated location is great. And isolated locations, that's what Evil Dead has been kind of built on for the most part. And you definitely have that utilized here to the best degree as well. It's very creatively unique when it comes to making certain things happen with all of those very messed up things. But you get some great stuff when it comes to the demonic characters as well, particularly the one that you are seeing in the trailer, one of the sisters. She has this really altering sort of thing where she'll keep flipping back and forth between the real person and then the demon, and it's played really, really well. It has some really creepy effects that are there throughout the entire film. And the action, once it does get going, like I said, it's blood splattered craziness. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell worked as executive producers on this film, and their fingerprints are all over it. This is something that honestly I thought Raimi could do this. Like, he will probably end up doing this at some point. Like, if they ever asked him to do a sequel to this movie, he would probably do it. And it just feels like this is right up his alley. I mean, obviously, this is right up his alley. I mean, he is the curator of this franchise. Sure, you can have some issues with this film, and yeah, there are some. Like I said, it does have very little when it comes to like certain character stuff. Like, you're not gonna get a ton of development. You're not exactly gonna have, you know, a novel's worth of time to spend with these characters to understand them. But like I said, it gives you a certain amount. If you want some more, then you're probably not gonna get that with Evil Dead Rise. There are certain things that happen which, you know, they do sort of gloss over after a while. Like, there are certain things that they bring up and you think, well, that maybe they could go into that more a little bit. But then again, those are things that have carried across the franchise. So I feel like if you're somebody who's been invested in it, then you're probably going to be like, well, okay, it's that thing. But it's also for someone who is uninitiated. If you're coming in, you might be like, maybe more of that. But I do want to make note of this uninitiated aspect. Let's say you've never watched an Evil Dead movie before, or you haven't seen Ash vs. Evil Dead. Can you watch Evil Dead Rise? Actually, yes, because it's very easy to sort of get into this groove. You know, you can actually somehow, you know, get along with what's going on in this film and sort of use this as an integration point. So if you watch this and you have a good time watching it, then you can watch the other Evil Dead movies and you can have a great time watching those. If you're a fan of the franchise, I don't see why you don't like this one. I mean, this one pretty much is right up your alley then. It's a film that has a lot to offer to everybody, and it works just the way it should. It doesn't try to do anything more, it doesn't try to do anything less, but in just that, it succeeds wholeheartedly. Like, it just needed to be a really fun, gory time and something that was just incredibly demented to look at for about 95, 96 minutes. And the fact that the film does that, what more do you want, right? I'm gonna give Evil Dead Rise an honest to God 8 out of 10. I say honest to God on that one because it's like, you know, the kind of thing that I was saying around it, right? You know, for any other review would be like, what, really? You normally give a lesser rating. If it's successful, I give a higher rating on it. Like, I'm nice that way. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.